Okay, it's 6 o'clock. I call the meeting to order. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, GL chapter 38, section 18, and the governor's July 16th, 2022 revised order extending remote participation by all members in any meeting of a public body. This meeting, the select board and finance committee will be conducted both in person and via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public or parties with a right or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website. For this meeting, members of the public and committee members may attend the meeting in person, for those who wish to do so remotely. For those who are not in person, every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. Pursuant to MGL 7C 38, section 20F, after notifying the chair of the public body, any person may make a video or audio recording of an open session of a meeting of a public body, may transmit the meeting through any medium. Beginning of the meeting, the chair shall inform other attendees of any such recording. So this meeting is being recorded by the town of Barrington, the Berkshire Edge, and other members of the public. Any member of the public wishing to speak at the meeting must receive permission of the chair. The listing of agenda items, those reasonably anticipated by the chair, which may be discussed at the meeting. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may be discussed, brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by law. We have some remote participation. We'll do a roll call vote. Select board. Garfield Reed here. Eric Gabriel here. Ed Abrams
here.
Lee Davis
Here.
and Steve Valen present. Bill?
Yes,
Finance Committee?
on the finance committee side, Madonna,
Here.
Milena,
Yes.
Ann,
Yep.
Richard,
Yes.
and I'm here as well.
Okay, so we'll start the meeting with some housekeeping from last night, and then this meeting will be broken down from what I can see into 4 parts. We'll go through the departments, which are section 6, tab 6. Then we'll go through capital, and not necessarily in this order, tab 7, special articles, tab 9, and the Berkshire Hills Regional School District. Let's start with Mark, Ellie, and Chris.
So we have a few, I just wanted to start off with asking if everyone received my email from earlier today. If you had any questions, we sent out as a follow-up to the question that came up last night. The subsidy request for Southern ambulance, the 1986 warrant article for the unfunded pension liability trust, the fiscal 23 awards to local nonprofit agencies, and then an answer to Bill's questions related to the veterans benefits and state aid. I have paper copies here if you haven't had a chance to look at it and would like a copy. Pass it down. So we'll.
So, is it for the community,
Anybody else?
support, GAO stands for,
Grant.
so is that that's the one that's in November? correct?
Yeah, that's community services, basically.
Right.
So this is just a summary of awards from fiscal 23. And this goes back to my comment last night that I was comfortable making some cuts to the community services budget because there are other sources of revenue and other opportunities for local nonprofits to receive from the town.
And what does CIF stand for?
Community impact.
Oh, that is the community. Okay, so
Yeah,
that's-
so I'm sorry, GAA is grant and aid, which is community services.
Right, right.
CIF is community impact fund, and CPA is the Community Preservation Act, and ARPA is the American Rescue Plan.
Okay. And ARPA's done, right? I mean,
We pretty much committed all of the ARPA funds with the exception of about $20,000 at this point.
Anyone have any questions before we get into the meeting? Let's see. So let's start with tab 6. And how we do this one is. We will start with page one and work our way in order through the end of this tab. So this is not our final vote. This is preparing for the public hearing. So for instance, let's talk about select board town manager. I'll announce the category and wait to see if anybody has any questions, or probably not too many questions we ask them, but if you have questions, obviously you're welcome to ask them. And anyone with any changes that they would like to recommend or motions, if there are none, we'll just keep going. If there are no changes, we won't vote on it. We'll just keep moving. So let's start with select board town manager. And net page 2, finance committee. Page 3, town accountant. Yeah, of course. We're on a roll, but you can.
If I remember correctly, you'd like to see the contingency move to the select board line.
I have that one.
It does, in my notes, it says that.
Yeah, I do recall that as well, so.
Okay, just wanted to confirm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so page 3 is the town accountant. This is where. That, I'm just gonna say it once and then let the two boards decide what you want to do. There are 5 new positions. And I understand why they're all in here and they're all important, but I am concerned about adding 5 positions all in 1 year with benefits. And then not knowing, what the trend is over the next couple of years. So this is the first of the new positions, which is line 51113. So I'm just gonna say that once, I won't say it every time, and I'll let the boards decide. So we're on page 3, town account.
Steve, can I jump in and just,
Yeah.
I guess I know we're jumping in fast here, but I just noticed that the percentage increase for taxes is gonna be good, it's gonna be higher because of the reevaluated school assessment. Is that right? So now we're up to 7.1% increase in the tax levy, is that good?
You did update the school assessment to include capital.
And to include capital. I see.
Yeah, so that's reflected. You should have received.
It's that this one, but also it's that affects.
Again, the school committee will vote Thursday.
Oh, I didn't
So it's subject to change, but we'll have a firm number for you by the 27th.
Yeah, I guess I bring this up because, I guess, really like to be able to go in front of the town with as low a tax increase as possible. And I just want to dovetail on what Steve was saying. I see that we've done a lot to try to, in this budget, increase the salaries of existing staff members. And I hear what you're saying about that's done to make sure that the people we have stay, and we've got some good people. So I think in a year that we're increasing the salary of existing staff to add new staff at the same time seems to me to be doing, and again, I'd be doing a lot all at once, and particularly as Steve mentioned, we know that there are changes in Great Barrington right now, but we don't know if they're going to last. And then once we hire, it's gonna be a much more painful process to cut staff positions in the future if this isn't a long-term trend. So I think that's just something I'm concerned about.
I'm comfortable. I think there are 5 positions. Or is,
Yeah, one position, the town accountant, assistant accountant position is already budgeted for 0.25 rounds, but it's like 4.75.
I'm comfortable, first of all, the way I like to do things is that we decide we want 2 positions this year or 3, to go back to Mark and say, what's your recommendation? Not to put the pressure on him, but it's his budget. He's the expert on these positions. And otherwise we can decide, but we're not the experts, but I'm more comfortable with, phasing these in over 2 or 3 years as we see what the trends are for revenue, et cetera. But that's up to both boards. It's not a reflection on the budget. I think it's a good budget, but I am a little more conservative.
I have that same 70 myself.
being a little conservative on that side, and would like to see them phase in a little slower, as Ann said, about taxes, et cetera. I'd like to see it a little slower, ease it in.
Could I say in this particular instance, am I understanding correctly that it looks like we're going from an accounts payable clerk and 1/4 of an assistant accountant to a full accountant? Or are these figures here of the number of? My note said that line 3 for the accounts payable clerk was going to be incorporated into the assistant.
Correct, by the end of the fiscal year. So it will be combined, so in FY 25, there will be no line 3.
But until then, it's still required.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I can only just echo everything that was said here. I think the budget has a lot of integrity and a lot of, credit to you guys, because I don't feel there's anything frivolous here. But I'm very concerned about basically raising the taxes as it is presented right now. And to me, if we were, I think we definitely need to retain our current people. I mean, that's really, the best strategy. But I would not go more than maybe adding one person, frankly, for this year, because we have a lot of going on and there will be a lot of money spent and we have a lot of big things happening in this town. So I don't think, any requests were not thought through. I totally see the rationale for it, but I just think we cannot afford it really. Yeah.
I guess I'll put my 2 cents in as well. I agree with mostly what everything's being said and understand why we would want to phase in the things. My concerns, being a select board member and just a resident would be, I would lean priority on our public safety, the fire position, the police position, and even just because of the capitals project that we saw in the high number and just everything that is on that department. Not that anybody's asking, but those are the 3 positions that I would put the most weight on. So, but I do agree with what anybody's saying. I do know everybody in this building works really hard and we probably are slightly understaffed. I just am concerned about filling them all at once. So.
Mark, how are you comfortable with dealing with this?
It would be good to hear from the finance committee and the select board how many positions you're comfortable with, so that we can come back to you, I guess, on the 22nd with a proposal.
Yeah, we could post that before the public hearing.
Yeah, we can share that.
Yeah, we
shared it earlier.
Yeah.
The just big picture here, and I realize that I'm not trying to convince you that 5 positions are what you should vote for tonight. The impact, though, just so you know, the total impact of all 5 positions on the average tax bill is about $41.
Well, what, do you have the total cost of the 5 new positions? Like in salaries and benefits, what's the total
Yes,
increase to the total budget
yes, $212,439.
for all 5 positions? That can't be.
Because that one-
Oh, right, we had to credit. So it's actually $194,739 for the new positions, because some of these positions are
The timing of
partially
it.
funded already, so. It's about it's 1.3% of our total budget, all 5 positions. So I'm just trying to, big picture wise,
But Mark, I'm sorry, could you just tell us what it would be if it's for the full year? Because I think that's what we are basically building it already into the following year. So I think it's important. I hear your argument totally, but yeah, I think it's important for us to understand what it's going to create also for the future years. Plus, there is going to be also potentially liabilities for future liabilities for, pension and retirement. So, I mean, I would be interested in seeing like the fully loaded cost, full year cost.
fiscal 25.
Yeah, what it would represent, yeah.
Okay, so let's, Yeah, Mark.
What was the wording on dollar reference to?
So if you were to fund all 5 new positions as presented, the average increase or the increase to the average tax bill is $41.82.
This year, this
In
coming
fiscal
year. Yeah,
24.
this coming year.
I agree. I mean, that is, I'll raise my hand.
yeah, no, go ahead,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Sorry, I agree that sounds modest, but I agree with Elena that we really need to see that number on a full year basis, what we'd be incurring for the following year. Because that's the commitment that we're making, really.
Yeah, and like I said on night one, you were presenting this, I realize it's aggressive, but I also feel responsible. As I review these budgets, I do feel that our town is growing and our current staffing levels are on the low side, and I'd like to start seeing those levels move in the upward direction so that we can continue to.
Speaking for myself, I certainly respect the request, and it's laid out very thoughtfully. It's just, this is all coming down to some type of prioritization that this group needs to figure out. I mean, individually, it all makes sense, but let me ask you on the town accountant, and just, I know you've thought through this, but has Allison worked long enough in town hall for you to know definitively that you need another person to help her out?
You want to answer that question?
Well, I would say in my almost 20 years of service in municipalities, I would say, yes, you are severely lacking in the accounting office. I have increased the number of accounts payable warrants from every other week to every week to ensure that our vendors are paid on a timely basis. And in doing so, that obviously creates more work. It's the same amount of work, it just takes longer to get it done. And essentially, I'm the only full-time position in that office. So.
But did we ever have more than one person, or it's just more, it's more than it used to be?
You've had part-time people.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we've had the accounts payable clerk for quite a while, I believe.
So may I suggest that what we do now, I think we've heard that people would like to see something less than the 5. I heard 1, 2, and 3. So let's go through the entire budget and see if there are other areas of cutting, because that could make a difference whether you want to fund 1, 2, or 3, depending how much we can reduce it by, or even more possibly, and then have Mark and Ally and Chris come back to us before the public hearing with a recommendation. So that was 3. Now,
I just had one other 2 cents in.
Sure.
And definitely know we have a growing town, and sure, everything is well thought out. But we're still looking at gaps in people's pays and the people that are working in the service industry. That $41 is gonna hurt. And we have a lot of people, we have 23.4% elders, they're paying taxes, and that's gonna hurt. So I'd like to definitely, my other reason for being very slow or slower progressing, I understand the need. But
I would also just like to mention that in my office, our additional projects, capital projects and such are going to create more invoices. So it's going to increase the volume in my office as well.
and there might be ways as we go through that we see other areas of cutting and it's really not cutting, not adding to the budget. So anything under technology, which clearly there's a new position here, so that I don't think we have to go through every new position and say the same thing. I think we all feel the same way.
I would just also suggest maybe one way to deal with that is maybe there are some areas where you may be able to outsource. If you really run into like a major issue, volume wise, before you really bring a full-time employee on board, because a fully loaded cost will be most likely much higher. Yeah.
There's another way to do this. I'm not saying I'm in favor, but I just want to put everything on the table. Those new positions are not necessarily the only way to do it. If we get done with this and we say, Mark, we need you to cut 250,000 or 300, come back to us and, you know, with that, I don't want to sit here, and I've done that before, of going through this method and cutting piecemeal. I think,
Right, yeah.
you know, Mark knows what the last things in are, which would be the first thing down typically. And so let's go through this and give some suggestions and then decide how we want to do this. It may be in fact that we fund some of the positions more than we want, but there's other places that we can reduce. Okay, technology assessors, page 5. Collector.
No, I'm sorry, on the assessors, the,
Give us a second here.
Yeah.
and I'm
We're on
sorry, maybe-
assessors?
Go ahead, Bill.
yeah, maybe this is a question for Ross, but the contracted services, I would just want to ask him that, you know, there's been a lot of, I'd say questions and sort of projects thrown at him that require research, and that relates to, you know, potential, you know, always the hypotheticals relating to the residential exemption. You know, I think there's been some other projects that required his time. So I would like to know if the contracted services are increased by those requests. And if they are, I would just request them or make a motion that, you know, when staff or committee members ask him to do something, that there just would be a clear understanding that this is going to run up the tab under this expense line. And that's,
And just to be clear, that's the reason that staff doesn't do anything requested by one finance committee member, one select board member, because
Right,
you're
right.
absolutely right, Bill, that it would have to be a majority of us to ask, so that, you know, if there's 10 of us, then we have 10 different requests, we're gonna be paying a lot for contracted services, so you're absolutely right, so, Ross, is that number a fair assessment of what you think you're gonna need for the year? And you are, just need to unmute yourself, Ross.
Request.
Yeah.
I think I recall while he's unmuting, that he mentioned this is a recertification year, a reassessment year, isn't that one of the years where everybody gets reassessed? Oh, I think he's coming on.
Yeah, go ahead, Ross.
Yes,
Yes,
I mean, I think the contract services number as it stands is good for what we need right now. You know, obviously, you know, if we decide to add additional projects or services, then we're gonna need additional help. You know what I mean? But based on what we have at the moment, I believe that number's solid.
and is this a reeval year?
No, that's next year.
Next year.
Next year.
Recertification.
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
So what is the number?
Bill, is that satisfying what you?
no, it's okay. I think just Ross, you know, like I said earlier, just when committees, Steve's point is well taken, when committees ask you to do something, yeah, I would just try to give them some guidance that you know, you're going to be using this money, and so that we can calibrate the requests accordingly.
Yes, understood.
Any other questions about the assessors or of law? Page 6, collector treasurer.
I have a small comment there on the tax title litigation number, which has gone from 10,000 to 25,000. My guess is that the timing of this is somewhat unpredictable. I would propose that some portion of that go to essentially be dependent on the finance committee reserve. So if these litigation matters play out and you need the money, I would certainly support that myself, but I'm just questioning whether or not we need to budget in, or can we just rely on some other more contingent source?
Before Alicia answers, let me just play devil's advocate. Doesn't really make a difference in the bottom line of the budget. Because it's all gonna fall to free cash if it's not used.
Well, the question is, what happens if you just, if this is Stonegate related, you know, and it continues to move at a Stone Age pace? So,
Then it falls to free cash, just like it would if it was in contingency for.
No.
Finance, that's just my opinion.
yeah.
Lisa, do you want to answer? Go ahead. Bill.
No, I understand your point, and I that works as well. I just, you know, we are, you know, if it's in the budget, we you know, it's highly likely to be spent. I'm just wondering if we can figure out if there's a, you know, another way to handle this. But
Yeah. That's fair question. Alicia, go ahead.
Well, so I'm not sure. I would ask maybe Allison if there's another way that we should handle it to maybe separate it out. I'm not sure if we can do that, but right off the top, we need to give the land court $10,000 for Stonegate so they can start a $10,000 retainer. So right off the top, there's going to be $10,000 going right towards Stonegate on that. I'm not sure if we can separate it. I could do a PO and put some of it aside specifically for Stonegate if you wanted me to. I'm not sure I would be comfortable doing that in case I have other cases that come up that need attention as well.
Just wanted to add that relying on the reserve, we have to remember that that has to be an unanticipated expense, and for anticipating
Yeah.
tax title litigation, we need to budget for it, so.
all right. But I try.
Page 7, human resources.
And this increases because of the interest fund.
That's correct, and I guess one question that would be helpful for me to get some feedback on tonight would be, are you interested in that additional 4 hours that's on the table right now from Sheffield? If we have to adjust this number accordingly.
Oh, that's not included here?
No,
This
this is
is status quo
this
budget.
is the share.
Yeah, I didn't know about the additional hours being an option when we drafted this budget, but we have to change it to 44,750 in order to fund that additional 4 hours of Sophia's time in fiscal 24.
So how many hours would you get then?
19
19 every week.
every week. Right now, we have her for 15.
Okay.
There's 6 hours on the table. Monterey would like 2, and we could take the additional
there's
4 if we would like.
Mhm, okay.
It seems like that would be money well spent, in my opinion, for the town of Great Barrington, an additional 4 hours. It's actually kind of nice that we can get it in that sort of increments instead of another full-time position or something.
Yeah, and if we don't do that, those 4 hours are gonna be spent with either Chris or Mark doing HR work. So it's not exactly the best use of their time. So it makes more sense to have someone who's an expert in HR, and that's what they were hired for. So everyone agree with that? I'm going with the head nod
Yes.
rule.
Yeah.
You'll have another opportunity.
Yes.
to debate
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, it's not the final answer, but it's almost.
Well,
Page 8, go ahead.
well, just on this point, this is to quote you, Steve, this is probably one of the better points that we should just let Mark make that call. I think that he's the one that, you know, really knows the workflows and sort of where things are getting stuck and where they're not getting stuck. So.
I agree. Page 8, town clerk.
I think you'd already mentioned, the equipment line. There was something about clickers for town meetings. They were gonna put that line item off until next year anyway. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yeah, the vendor is unable to attend our annual town meeting to explain how it all works, so we decided we would delay it for a year.
So that line is out.
Yeah, it's not funded in there. It's not in the blue.
Got it. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I looked at the same thing. I was trying to remember.
And Jen is on the line if it hasn't, by the way.
No.
Page 9, conservation. Page 10, planning board.
I have a note about. And housing consultant, I guess this is for Chris, there was discussion about, on one of the planning board meetings. Starting housing consultant. And if that was an item, I'm not necessarily talking right here, but that would go under the planning board's. Budget, so I'm just wondering if you could clarify that discussion or.
After the select board and planning board housing subcommittee joint meeting between the full boards, and the planning board's subsequent regular meeting, they discussed, followed up on some of the ideas that came out of that joint meeting, one of which was possible, additional resources for staff resources for housing projects. We didn't identify a number or a place in the budget of where that would come. I did suggest that if possible, we could avail ourselves of additional services or shared services through Berkshire Regional Planning Commission. But these discussions were after this budget was put together. And as we're sitting here now, we don't have a number for you. Not that that answers your-
Yeah, no, I just wondered where it kind of fell in terms of the overall
Where
discussion.
it would
and-
fall,
Yeah, it would be under.
the best fall under planning and development.
We had talked about adding, you had mentioned adding $20,000, and
Right.
it's a little ahead, that's page 12.
Right,
It's not the planning board, it would be versus, like,
right, that economic development line could be increased,
So that's
by
where,
some.
Yeah.
for the money that is. On the special articles for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, that wouldn't be something that they might consider using it. I mean, obviously, I don't want to talk for that committee, but. For the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, that they might want to use some of that for a housing consultant, or is that just whatever that money is?
It's most, I mean, if town meeting were to vote that, and it would be up to the trust. The trust could
They could
use
do
it
whatever.
for projects and or for housing assistance.
Hmm, okay. So the hours that we have right now for Berkshire Regional Planning,
let's wait till we get. to
Oh, till we get that. Okay, I'm just trying-
We're not quite there yet, so let's,
okay,
it's only 2 away, so.
okay.
So planning board is 10, 11 zoning board of appeals. Yeah, page 12, the planning community development. Go ahead, Mike.
So this is where it would.
Yeah. Do we, in
Okay.
line 5, 6, 4,
Gotcha.
1, 1.
So Chris, do you see that there was a need to add the $20,000 that was discussed here? Or do you feel like it's something that we can just, progress through the year and if something comes up?
I mean, that's tough to answer. I'm not,
Okay.
we haven't
Yeah.
discussed exactly what the projects are or the priorities are, so, I can't say.
Is this the assistance with getting funding and grants and things like that? Is that the one we're talking about?
For housing.
the economic development line?
Your question was about,
I guess I'm just, we're talking about line 56411,
Yes.
right? And isn't that the money we spend to help people, to help us, help you, to help us get various projects going?
oh, in part, sure, that economic development line, does actual economic development. We have staff from Berkshire Regional Planning Commission, they're helping us with the cultural district, in actually implementing initiatives of the town, whether they're downtown, wherever they are in town, having to do with economic development. A solid focus of that work in the past year has been on housing related issues. Housing and economic development are intricately related.
Yeah.
It's not just, I wouldn't want somebody to get the impression that this is like a grant writer.
Okay, I understand.
Yeah.
No, I know you've talked about this at other budget meetings in past years, and I do think just seeing the amount of development that's gone on, it's definitely to me, it's really paid off. It's been paid off. It's a very small amount of money, I think, for what we get for it.
This would be I think the place to add it. I can't tell you what those services would be, at this point. We haven't had that.
Okay. Well, I guess it might be premature, but I just wanted to note that was something that was noted.
So I'll just say this, it may not be premature because we're kind of running out of real estate here. We have the public hearing, which we will meet before that, but if there is an interest to put this in there, we don't have a lot of time to discuss this. We're not gonna know much more by the public hearing. So I'm not advocating one way or another, but I don't want anybody to be disappointed either, thinking they got 2 or 3 more bites of the apple.
Well, I guess what's difficult is finding a, dollar amount, because we're kind of fishing around saying, okay, well, yes, there might be a need for more consultant work in relation to housing, but without having something tangible in front of us saying, we have some proposals, and I know with the executive summaries that were brought out of the joint meeting with the select board and the planning board and the housing subcommittee, that's something that will need some attention. But it's hard to kind of say, well, what dollars will be attached to pushing that forward, and if there has to be a dollar figure, or can that be done in-house as it stands now? So I kind of, it'd be great to say, hey, $20,000, good luck, but without really saying what's actually gonna cost to move this vision from here to here. Or we want to have a placeholder, but I don't really know if that's.
Well, the other problem is from the discussion we had about a half hour ago. In my mind, if we add 20 here, where are we gonna cut that 20 from? Because no one here seems to have the appetite to, it would be disingenuous if we keep adding on after we've had, the budget's a little bit uncomfortable, so let's add another 20,000 here, 20 there, and then, come back to us with a cut of, instead of 150, come back with 190, because we've added 40,000. That doesn't seem the right way to
I guess
do
to
it.
Phil's point, it's priorities, what are we gonna prioritize? And, if housing is seen as a priority, and I'm just saying this, I'm not saying I'm hanging my hat on this, but is that something that's gonna generate, housing is gonna generate economic development, and we're gonna bring more families here, and, da, da, da. So if you kind of see it in the bigger picture, instead of housing is the core, and then, this will feed off this, and this will grow the economic development and the workforce, the family, so that's kind of where I am, but I know it's a matter of priority, and it's not just housing, it's what housing then creates for this community, so. But it's hard for me to kind of advocate for a certain number, because I can't say, well, here's the project, and this will cost $20,000, so it's kind of so maybe, I'm kind of floating it out there, and maybe when we come back and finish the discussion, I might say, hey, what about that one item? So can I do that?
Of course you can.
And echo what Lee's saying as well. I think we kind of run into it, Bradford was correct, with the affordable housing and CPA. We want money, but they want to make sure they know what you're spending it on before we get it. And sometimes it's difficult. It sounds like this is the situation here. So yeah.
Well, plus, I think there's not a shortage of money in the budget for different housing needs.
Mhm.
And will another 20 make a difference or not, is the question. I'm not saying it won't, I'm not saying it will, but it's not like the budget is completely stripped of any housing money. There's in different pockets, there is money in there, but
Well, to put Chris on the spot, so just in terms of and I'm gonna just focus on this because this is tangible, the two housing subcommittee recommendation, what came out of the housing subcommittee, are those two proposals that would, well, that would necessitate more money to push this through to a possible town meeting, or is that something that you're saying, okay, well, that I can take on this, or this can happen, with the existing staff? Or is that something that you say, hey, we can't do this unless we have, more help or more money or another?
Well,
consultant or-
We're having another internal meeting to discuss those proposals. I think on Friday, so I don't,
Mhm.
I won't go on the spot. for
Yeah, yeah.
that in particular,
Yeah.
just because I haven't, we haven't completed those discussions.
Okay.
But I think Steve's point is good. There is other money in the budget. To be sure, this economic development line, I have used it for housing related matters. I consider it economic development, totally appropriate to spend out of here. So there is this line, and hopefully it will be funded at our request. So there's a portion there. Community Preservation Act administrative fund money could be used to advance housing related goals, and the housing trust could use some there. So we could bring a variety of sources together onto a project if we had to. If we can.
okay, unless you're going to make a motion, I'm
No.
gonna move ahead. Page 13, buildings and grounds.
And can I just get some clarification on the funding for the DPU, the new assistant DPW superintendent? So this is a shared position with highway, is that right?
It's
And,
highway and.
and is this a full year position that's being funded or starting in January? It wasn't clear.
That's 6-month start, or 6-month delay, so that would be January.
So, so it's 20,500 in one budget and then another. Where is it in the other one? Page 19. But I think it's split 50-50, right?
There's also some funding in wastewater that we.
Is that a wastewater?
Oh, it's in the allocation. Okay, sorry.
But
it's
so
in the
it's
allocation.
40,000, 41,000 for half a year, so 82,000 for a full year.
Just one thing to point out is, there's obviously a big increase here as Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, but we have a new hire here, the landscaper. And when you add the projected salary with the supplies that that individual would need, and then there's sort of the and then they would be using some portion of an older vehicle that would require a newer vehicle for some other responsibility. So just rough numbers. The landscaper is sort of $100,000 investment. Among rough numbers.
I don't want to speak for Joe, but I don't think Joe was proposing to buy a new vehicle. I think he's proposing to extend the life of an existing vehicle.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so my numbers are so the landscaper salary is 53,000. The building and ground supplies number is going up roughly 35,000, which I presume is sort of the equipment and supplies and plantings for the landscaper, roughly. So maybe it's more 80 or 90, pardon me. As I said before, I actually, I support this. This is, it would sort of make the town look much better in very important places, but it is a $90,000 increase, and it's a big chunk of the increase here, so I just.
Not totally, because some of this is contracted services that we're not going to do anymore.
Okay.
We do hire people to do like Main Street, and that we will no longer hire those people. So you're right, it isn't, it's actually not a new position. This position started in last year's budget, and it hasn't been hired yet.
No, it's budgeted for January first. The position is internally right now, which is required in our collective bargaining agreement. And assuming no one applies internally, we'll post externally and go from there.
But you guys need to hire someone fairly soon because you will need to start planting fairly
That's the goal.
soon. Yeah, because I think that was part of the problem last year. They planted at the wrong time of the year. They planted in December. I saw them on.
That wasn't our staff though.
No, I know that, but what I'm saying is it's part of the issue why things didn't grow as they should have. Because they were, so I think we have to make sure that we get the person in time for them to plan their own.
But the contracted services number, Mark, is flat from last year, so. Is there some other stuff going on in that line item that's offsetting what Steve is referring to?
As far as costs that we.
Right, so
will
if we
know
add the
about.
landscaper, should that number be going down?
I'm not exactly sure. Joe, do you know what that contracted services line in buildings and grounds is for right now?
We'll use that for building consultant work. If there's, something with heating system or something like that.
So the question is, and if I misspoke, I'll apologize, but when we hired people to do Main Street, what line did that come out of?
That was actually part of the capital budget.
That was capital.
And it finished last fall.
Was it capital? It couldn't have been borrowing. It had to be free cash, or it had to be out of, I mean, you wouldn't plant things on Main Street and borrow for 5 years for that.
It was part of an overall street and road budget.
It's almost taken out of there.
So can I just ask a clarification? So we voted for the landscaper at last year's budget, but there's nothing in the budget from the town meeting vote. That's what I just don't understand.
Yeah, didn't start, it wouldn't have started to
I know,
January.
but wouldn't we have had to vote for the budget, for an amount in the budget? No,
It last year.
but it's not here.
There's nothing on the town meeting vote line
No price, no number
for the
there.
landscaper.
Oh, I see, it was not there. You're right. Yeah.
That's why I thought it was
Yeah.
entirely new. I
Yeah.
did go back and look and we did vote on it, but I don't know what the amount was.
We'll have to look at that.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
might have made
We'll look
makes
into that.
makes a slight increase.
It would make a
here.
difference. Yeah.
So
We did fund it last year.
I apologize. I found where we voted for it and I should have looked at the amount and but it took a lot of digging.
We'll look into that.
Okay.
Get that correct.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, are we saying that we're putting a note on possibly having the contracted services be less than?
No, because they didn't take it out of that line, they took it out of the general capital line. It's the problem. And is Chief on?
Yes, I'll go ahead and move. Yeah, that's right.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
Yeah, so this is, I want to come back to this point about the community impact funding. It's obviously more broad than just Chief Story's budget. We have about $4.5 million in there. It's a big pile of money, and from some comments last night, it sounds like there's a view that we want to sort of go very slowly and carefully with using that money. So I'd like to get maybe a better understanding about that view. But, the finance committee received a very dense sort of 2-pager from town council about how that money could be used under his assessment of current law. And it, gross simplification, it seems to imply that a lot of the money can be used for a lot of policing related activities, younger people, substance abusers. It's really all about offsetting the increased costs that the town incurs from the cannabis business relating to policing and other matters. So long-winded comment short, I have a feeling we should be using more of that money to enhance the police budget and potentially offset some of this increase in the budget, because that money's there and looking, to my mind, looking for a good purpose, and this certainly would qualify.
I guess my only question would be, what specifically are you referring to in the police budget?
Well, I mean, it requires some, some connecting of the dots, but, you go through, I mean, I'm looking at town council's, laundry list of how that money can be used. And it says costs associated with the increase in substance abuse, including but not limited to such items as increased demand on local healthcare clinics, need for increased counseling and intervention programs. And then it also talks about other specialized training for local law enforcement officers. It's a long, it's a 2-page list, but, just going through it, there's a lot of items to me that, sort of are consistent with what our police department's doing. So, yeah, I mean, it's not an easy thing to do, but it just seems like there's an intersection between how this money can be used as laid out by town council and what our police department's doing. And we have a pile of $4.5 million there that's otherwise sitting there. So, I obviously, I'm not the right person to go through all the specifics of what's going on at the police department. But again, a quick read suggests there's a lot of overlap.
Can I just jump in? Because I was thinking about the same thing last night as I was reflecting. I mean, I was thinking the community outreach officer, and, we talked a lot about that. We're all really excited about this co-responder program. And this to me would seem to fit under there. And then Chief Storti, you were talking about, thinking you want to have an additional staff line, which again, we're all really struggling with all the new staff lines. But you mentioned wanting to get someone up at the high school, up at the schools, and that to me would seem to fit in a town that has 7 cannabis dispensaries. So I don't know. I do think that we should be able to use some of this money to help offset the budget and still keep us, building the services we have to offer. I mean, I'd just be shocked that co-responder couldn't come to that.
May I weigh in? It's
Go ahead.
all over the state. There's towns are being challenged on this money because it's very specifically for dealing with the impacts of legal cannabis. So if we have a co-responder and they're dealing with people who are reacting because they smoke too much marijuana, that's viable. But I don't know how many co-responders calls do that. Same for putting someone in the high school. The people who are challenging this actually have an argument that police budgets have been less taxed by legal marijuana because they're not enforcing marijuana laws any longer. So if there were a law enforcement or police based program to help deal with kids, and this is definitely an issue, help deal with kids who are smoking more, we could use it for that. But we have to be very careful if we start using it for even drug use in general, because it's legal marijuana that it's supposed to target.
Marcos, go ahead.
I really just wanted to say, I talked to Ally and the chief today about the co-responder position, and I think that we could probably justify funding that position through the community impact funding portion of our free cash. I would like to get a legal opinion, but I wanted, before I do that, to hear from you all if that's something you're interested in.
Definitely.
Are you talking about just the 5,000 of our?
Or 12,
Or the
which is-
whole?
yeah, after 12, or any number for that
Okay.
matter.
Okay.
And
Can I
and
ask- sorry.
Just as a couple things that I just want to respond to. So the select board and the town staff has a plan for the money. We can, this is kind of like using free cash all at once. So we can spend this money in a more aggressive manner, but it's gonna end. And therefore, you're gonna jump off a cliff. You're gonna be, after, let's say we use it in 3 years, not 8 years. And that money's gonna be gone, and we either gonna have to absorb a lot in the budget, or programs that are very worthwhile are gonna go by the wayside. And even the co-responder, and I'll repeat what Ed said, if the co-responder, and this is why we need a legal opinion, if 75% of their calls are for psychiatric problems and alcohol-related problems, have nothing to do with marijuana. It'll be interest, if we end up in court, which is not unheard of, we're gonna have to justify every penny we spend. And then we're probably gonna spend $100,000 in court to justify the 12,000 that we're spending on the COVID fund.
Can I just ask, the chief, is it possible for you to give us an idea how many calls over the last 12 months were related to the use of legal marijuana? Is it something that you guys even would be able to track? I mean, do you have a sense where, is it 10%? Is it 5%? Is it 80%? Just ballpark.
I would totally be speculating, but I can just say that from my experience, mental health and substance abuse disorder do go hand in hand many times, more often than not. But again, it's not something that we actually track.
Right.
That information may be disclosed on a deeper level and with the co-responder and or with their clinicians or any type of reference or service that we provide. But on the scene, when we're evaluating that the purpose isn't to, when the police are called, it's really to de-escalate the situation, identify what the issue is, and then get the proper resources in place to help that person, not just in that moment, but then the aftercare. And that's the co-responders good, because they're on scene, they can identify, they know how to evaluate better than we do. Even though we have spent many trainings on educating ourselves on dealing with these situations, that's our primary goal, is to get that person help and get them long-term care.
I understand that. My question was more, I mean, do you have any data that could basically tell us that maybe 10% of the calls are related to issue related to legal marijuana, as Ed pointed out? It's not just substance abuse, which is a much bigger issue, obviously.
Right.
And if you don't have, if that information is not really readily available, we could not really make that decision, frankly.
That's correct. We do not track the specific.
You don't have that information.
Yes.
Okay.
Lee, go ahead.
Was this program originally funded through a grant through the Breed Center? So is that,
I don't think it was grant funded, it was just funded.
it was. through
Correct.
grant? Okay, so is that off the table now, or do we think that they're gonna come back in and be able to fund it later on, or is this pretty much now a town issue that?
Currently, it's a town issue. We have started the conversations. Once Ivy did leave and the program canceled at the beginning of this year, I was trying to troubleshoot and kind of come up with some solutions. When I first posed the dollar amount that you see there, it was more a way to look to try to keep her, to entice maybe on top of her salary from the Green Center to try to keep her here. That's how the conversation first started. But then probably a month after that, when she told us that she was actually going to take that new position. So then it kind of went to scramble mode, trying to figure out a solution of how we can service those people in our community that have that need in a way. So that's when I spoke to Dr. Elliott and a couple other people.
So is the Green Center pretty much finished with pursuing this program?
From what Dr. Elliott told me, that they were going to try to fill that position, but it's not guaranteed.
So if they were to go ahead and fill it and then we funded this, how would that work? That would just, well, I guess, just be added to it.
Or with all the free cash at the end of the year, we wouldn't spend it either one way or the other. Anyone else?
Yeah,
Well, hold on one second.
Yeah.
So you go ahead.
This is apparently not the year to ask this, so it's thinking ahead. If we were wanting to be able to respond with a co-responder 24/7, is that a useful thing, or is it enough for officers to respond and then pull her in later? And then B, again, probably not for this year, just listening to the rest of the board talk about new positions, but is that a possibility, or would that be terribly expensive?
That would be terribly expensive. What worked really well with this is the relationship that we had built with Ivy, because she made herself available via phone pretty much 24/7, which is very unusual. So even if we couldn't have her on scene, we had access for guidance questions, and we could manage the situation to a point where we could then either maybe set up a time where she could come in and assist us.
Go ahead, Aaron.
So, yeah, I guess just in general on this co-responsor, and I guess on Ivy, I just find this thing extremely important. And we really have mental health issues throughout the globe, the state, so it's not like it's just specific to Great Barrington or anything like that, but I see this as a vital role that needs to be, budgeted to whatever the chief says it needs to be, and even the possibilities of, being able to get, whether it's somebody like Ivy back and secured, so we're not worried about that position, constantly getting turned over, just because I believe comfort level for the people involved, I would assume. So.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. So, I gave a lot of thought to this last night, and I think one of the questions that was posed to me was about the sharing of the services. And, that's the way we originally had the model set up, because we weren't sure how it was going to work out when we launched this in 2019. But last night, after giving it some thought, a lot of communities now are having their own co-responder within their community. And ideally, that would be the best way that I think it could run. And maybe we could offer the services to other communities for, they could assist with, the services. But going beyond even the the people in the community, there's other roles that people probably don't know that she helped out with. And that was one thing that's really important to me is the mental health of first responders and victims. And, people don't see that, but we did debriefings. We set up meetings for people who have seen some pretty tragic things. And she was able to develop that relationship and kind of give them people support and help to keep them focused and on track, and be able to complete their job and duties, and process those internal stressors in a healthy manner. Because that's the worst thing that can happen, is if you don't have the proper tools to be able to manage that, that's when you can make some bad decisions, and or you turn to unhealthy ways of managing that stress. So that's something that a benefit that I see that a lot of people probably don't realize, but that was a really, really big help.
So are you talking about a shared position? You're talking about a full-time position, shared with Berkshire Health Systems or the Green Center? Or are you suggesting that we just need to have one FTE for this position?
I would like to see, again, in a perfect world, will Great Barrington have somebody in that type of position with a relationship with Berkshire Health Systems in the Green Center. I think that's a key partnership for this position to succeed, is to have that partnership and that communication. Logistically, how that would play out, it would have to take some conversations and some work to figure out how we can manage that. And then if other communities, chose to use our services, we could figure out some type of way to do that. Maybe with the stipends or the little fees that they had budgeted for. I did call the chiefs this morning. I got a response from Chief Munson. So far, they're kind of in the budget process like we are, and he is 100% committed to it. So far, it hasn't been cut from his budget, but it's still got to go through a couple different steps. Chief LaForest from Egremont is in the same position. I think he said March 10th. He shouldn't have a better idea. Chief Fahey from Monterey did not have a success with getting support for it. He supports the program. Unfortunately, the select board and the finance committee, from what he told me, he's got a lot of stuff on the other things that he's asking for. He's brand new to the position of chief, just from December, so he's only been in the role a few months. And the same with New Marlboro. He could not get it to his budget.
So to me, and then it'll be Lee and then Garfield, but to me, it looks like we need to go this alone and then with help from the Green Center, VHS, and then, charge appropriately to the other towns who are still interested, as opposed to depending on all the Southern Berkshire towns, some of which is, this year aren't interested. Lee,
Yeah,
go ahead.
I mean, I would love to see the town taking the lead on this and being a trailblazer and putting this into the budget right now as a full-time position. Obviously, it speaks to the 5 positions we already have, but to explore that in the time that we have before we go to town meeting or to the public hearing. But I think this is so key, and I would love to see a way that we can fit it in within this budget somehow. So.
Garfield?
How often was your services required last year, Chief?
I can get that number for you. I'm sorry, I did not do analysis of it, but I can, because we do track all that, all the times that we go out.
I'm all for the idea. I like to think that we can keep abreast of the mental health situation and take care of people. So I'm just wondering how often it's used, and if we have $20,000 for someone that we use 4 or 5 times, it seems like not a great use of the money. Although I do advocate for it, but I'd like to make sure it's needed, really useful service. I know it is, but is it enough to run full time?
Yeah,
Anyone else? Go ahead, Chief, please.
I was just gonna say, I can get that information for you. We have used it used her in situations, even at the schools when the kids are in crisis. Sometimes we've used it very frequently. It's been one of the better programs, like I explained last night. So.
And I think even just make the case that you made about how our own responders find it useful to have our own staff. I think that's something that we shouldn't overlook, the fact that, the fire department can use it and the police department and so forth. I think that's really, really key.
Yeah, and EMS. Yeah, that's.
EMS, yeah.
We've had, even people who have witnessed some accidents ask for those services. And, so it's something we can offer above and beyond that you normally, the people that wouldn't ask for that, they would just go on their way and say, I witnessed this terrible thing. But to have that outlet or that support and then the follow-up, which is key. The follow-up is the key. You gotta keep that conversation going.
Yeah, and this could dovetail into the police coming, into the schools, if that ever were to happen, that this person could be available for mental health.
Yeah, Ivy and I actually had some conversations with the school to do some education stuff with the kids. Through the school, with the support of the school. We never got that far. COVID didn't help us, but then, then this new position when she left. Kind of some things, so.
So, using my years of experience, which is too many, maybe for some people, we're starting to come up with ideas, but we're not cementing anything. And we're gonna get through this whole meeting in the next hour and a half or so and not be anywhere different than we were at 6 o'clock. We want to we've had no motions. If we want to put this in, that's fine. We could do it, have a motion and do it. I would love to see us, if we're going to do it as a partially funded position and see if the town staff can get an agreement for the rest of the funding through either the Green Center or the health system or both. So that we're not on the hook for another full-time position. What's that?
Or the community impact.
Of course, community impact, whichever. I'm leery of using that, but that's beside the point. But it doesn't mean it's wrong, it's for sure. So, I mean, we can move ahead because we've got a long ways to go, but if this is something, and it does sound like something we're interested in, I think it's appropriate to have a motion from both boards. It's not set in stone, but we need to give better direction to town staff before we leave here.
I'm off for a motion.
Yeah, I just wondered, I'm kind of going between the part-time and full-time position. Is that give us, Chief Story, in your view, if we say part-time and then hope that we'll get the rest of the funding elsewhere, does that help us? Or should we committing to that funding, will that really give you more latitude to really go full in and then, get reimbursements later on once we find them?
I think, yeah, the second part, if we could get the funding, do it, and then look for the support through those other means for reimbursements, I think would probably be the most efficient way of doing it.
Will be the most efficient. I know I won't support it because we just, the budget's already gone up too much.
Yeah.
It needs to be cut. So if we're gonna put another full-time position in, I think it's just too much, but I'm all in favor of not just 5,000, but I think, and it doesn't mean the motion can't be for full-time, it can pass 4-1. But I would love to see us do a part-time position in between the other towns that have committed, community impact or the Green Center or BHS to get something put together that doesn't 100% add to the budget. That would be my preference, but that's up to everyone else on the two committees.
Yeah, I mean, I would make a motion to fund this position. I can't come up with a number. I'll pull one out of the air and say $25,000. And I have in my, unprofessional view, it seems like this can be funded through the community impact fund. So I would, I think we can be, if we are accessing that different pool of money, and so therefore we're not increasing the budget, and so that makes sense. So I would that convoluted motion is increasing the allocation to this line item, based upon town staff getting more comfortable with using the community impact fees, which it seems like, based on Allison's earlier comment, they feel a little better about it.
So that's your finance committee's motion. You get a second and a vote, and I'll get a select board.
I'll second that.
So Ann just seconded if you didn't hear.
All right, any further discussion?
Can we have discussion?
It's a discussion.
On the finance committee side, yeah. Any further discussion on the finance committee side?
Yeah, I'm in support. I think this is, if we are gonna ever use those funds, I cannot think of any better way. So I would imagine this to give us a pretty good chance to do that. So I'm all for.
This is to fund through the community impact fund.
Yeah,
That's not
funding,
how I heard the
funding.
motion, no.
Say the motion again to.
Maybe
Yeah, no, it was pretty, well, I'm gonna make a motion to fund $25,000 for the co-responder program. Provided that the funds would be coming from the community impact fee.
Yeah, that's what I understood, yeah.
And that was seconded by you.
Yeah,
Okay, I would vote yes. For your motion.
yes.
Okay, I would support a larger number if that, you know, if that made sense to the chief and we could fund it through the. But we're
Not
just,
that I'm on the finance committee, but what I would propose a motion for 25,000 and. If it can't be used through the community impact, then the whole thing is dead. I'd rather not do that. I'd rather that we fund 25. Either through the budget or preferably the community impact. And that way, if David says the community impact can't be used, we still have the program. And the remaining of it can be funded through whether the other towns or through any way we can find, but that's up to you. That's your motion.
right, all right, so to take another stab at that, we have the $5,000 that's currently in the budget.
Well, you don't have anything, because right now, you didn't make it clear, you want to keep that 5 in, or is this in addition to the 5 or instead of the 5?
I'm trying to keep it vague for, sorry.
You can't get much vaguer.
All right, so we have 5,000 in the budget right now for the co-responder program. I'm making the motion that we increase that by another 20,000. And that we, under the assumption that we could fund the full amount through the community impact funding.
But I guess I do agree with Steve here. I think we should just decide to increase it by 10,000 and instruct the staff to look
see it.
into if we can fund it in that through the community impact.
And if they cannot fund it, then what?
It's still in the budget.
Then I think
Okay, so
we'll
then-
put it
so
in the
we have to be
budget,
clear
at least
about that.
until we hear.
Yeah, so I guess
I support Phil's motion, because I mean, to me, I hear the arguments, but we are basically saying, we started this meeting saying we need to reduce the budget. And what we have discussed so far was how to increase the budget.
I know,
And I just don't know, you know, I don't find it frankly very productive. So,
but can we have an item in the budget that says if it's not funded in the way we want it to be funded, we remove it from the budget? Can we have such an?
It's actually not going to run the budget if the money's going to be out of the.
it's not gonna be in it,
It's not
yeah,
gonna be in
yeah.
the budget.
well,
It's not
to
gonna
take
be in the
another
budget
stab,
because
to
different
flip it
source.
around, I'm sorry, to
Yeah.
flip it around, can we ask Mark and Allison to figure out in a more definitive way if this program can be funded with the community impact fees? And then if that's positive, we could approve it at the next session.
Yeah, and actually the community impact fee is through the select board. So that's where ultimately you're gonna have to get the voters, I think, or through the town manager's office. I think the town manager's office, actually, it's not even through the select board.
Right.
Are you talking about funding this 25 out of?
It depends.
$20.
Bill made 11 motions. What would it be?
You'll be tested on all of it, yeah. No, so, yeah, so I'm sorry if it is confusing, all right, so.
It is
we're-
confusing.
I don't understand why it's not in the budget.
Yeah, so Bill, your intention was 20,000, the 5 stays there and the 20 is out of the community impact fee, which is really not, that's a recommendation, that's not.
Obviously, no,
Yeah.
it's not under our authority, but
Yeah.
if you can do 20 through the community impact, why can't you do the 25? You know, I don't.
Well, I didn't say you couldn't, I just was trying to figure out your motion, and I thought that was it, I thought I had it. So their recommendation, if they vote on this, is 25 and recommend that you use the community impact for the 25.
Not 25 out of the 500 though, correct?
500.
5,000.
500, yes, I understand what you're saying. This is Bill, is this in addition to the 500 that's already being used possibly?
I'm indifferent on that. We've got $4.5 million there trying to find a home, so I'm indifferent on that.
Why don't we do this? We're gonna increase this line to $25,000, assuming that's where you're headed. In the meantime, we'll get a legal opinion, and on the 22nd, we'll come back and go from there.
But none of Bill's motions said that.
But assuming that's,
Yeah, but I don't know that's the direction that they want to go in. I'm not speaking
I
for
guess
them.
I'm a little confused about how this money gets allocated. So if the 25,000 can come out of the community impact fund, then it's not even anywhere in the budget, it's just.
It's not
We're
operating
gonna have
budget
to
because
create-
it's coming from the community.
If David says, I'm
Yeah.
comfortable with
Yeah.
using $25,000 to fund this co-responder
Mhm.
program, we're gonna take it entirely out of this budget and put it in the special
Yeah.
article.
Oh, it has to go to a special article.
It's gonna need a separate vote at town.
Or you could raise, and I'm not disagreeing with you, so you could raise a 500,000 special article 525 with 25 earmarked
For
for
that,
this.
yeah,
To make it just a little simpler.
yeah.
That's great. I agree.
I'm not
That's
sure
why-
I,
What's the-
they're done. It's one board than the other.
Well, I'll go first then. Again, I'll echo, I see the importance of it. If we're gonna give 25 this year from the impact, but who knows what's gonna be next year and the year after and the year after, we will be running out of funds and not to be continued forever. And I don't see anything wrong myself with seeing, the other towns chipping in. I don't know why we have to, carry the whole weight, Great Barrington, and there's other towns that will use the services.
I don't think we said not to, I agree with you 100%, but two towns have said that they're not going to be able to fund it, so. Or they're not
We're
willing
gonna
to
get
fund
to
it.
use it then.
Well, that's true, that's true, I agree with you. I'm also getting concerned that we really need to. And not that we're not gonna go for a while longer tonight, is schedule another meeting before the public hearing. I don't see it's ever gonna be ready for the public hearing. We're gonna have so many figures up in the air, and Ally's not gonna say this, but I'll say it. She may have a spreadsheet, but there's gonna be a lot of plugging and playing to figure out what we're doing, because we're not giving any concrete numbers at this point. So, before we're done tonight, I'm not getting a no from Ally, so I've done this too many times to know that you need to go into the public hearing with almost everything, all your ducks in a row, and we're not doing that right now, which is not a criticism.
We do have notes and we can run through those notes at the end if that's helpful.
Yeah, no, that's fine, but what we're giving you is suggestions, not concrete directions. And that's okay, there's nothing wrong with it. I'm not criticizing either board. It's just, I don't want to go into the public hearing as vague as we are right now. And asking for as much information. So we'll talk about that. Actually, Finance Committee has a date for a meeting, which you probably weren't planning on using, right? The 21st, the night before the public hearing. Bill?
I'm looking it up too.
Yeah,
We
I,
don't want to wait till the night before, do we?
Yeah, that's risky.
Something like that, yeah.
yeah, that's just
Oh,
me,
it's Tuesday.
yeah, there's no magic to that date, in my opinion. That was just, we have that recurring third
Yeah.
Thursday.
Okay, let's talk about this at the end, before we get through this.
I just ask one more question.
You go
Just
first,
the chief, now, the 25 grand, obviously, it's much more helpful than the 5 grand, but I mean, do you see that even possible to pull somebody in or get that role filled for whatever those hours are? If it is, I mean, that seems to me like it would be a part-time role. Do you think you would be able to fill that role? Is there, are we
That-
worried about staffing availability, I guess, for that?
Yeah, that would work if, with, partnerships who help fund that position
Okay.
through the Green
That's what I
Center.
was hoping you
and
would
or
say.
Berkshire Health.
Okay, let's move ahead to page 15, which is fire department. Page 16, emergency management. Seventeen, building.
Did we have the building inspector speak?
We didn't
No,
the first time, but he is on the line if you want to ask him a question.
Right, yeah, I get, yeah, so we just didn't cover this one last time.
promoting right now.
This last year, I think we talked about sort of revisiting the building inspector fee schedule to see if those needed to be updated to reflect real cost and what the other towns are doing. Has that happened? And can you update us on that?
Every department is reviewing their fee schedule now, and rather than going before the board 12 times, we're gonna do it all in one shot, so that should be happening relatively soon. I think we've received a response now from every department, so.
Thank you.
Anything else for building inspector?
Mhm.
18 animal control officer. 19 DPW highway. By the way, while you're looking, we have 21 people on tonight, 10 panelists, 11 attendees. Last night, I think the height was 20. 10 and 10.
On the DPW, it's the question. Small print, I'm struggling with it. 54810 gas and diesel. We're budgeting $147,000. And that's, if we just compare that to year to date in the current year, that's roughly just under 3 times what we're spending this year. So
54810.
Yes.
right, yeah.
4810.
Gas and diesel.
Right, so I certainly respect, reserving and being conservative and all that, but it just right now, it just seems like, we're reserving. That's a pretty big reserve. So the question is, do we need all that?
Just keeping in mind, Bill, that the actuals are only through the end of December.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
What are the actuals now? We have the actuals.
About 57,508 through the end of December.
I think what we have procured already is almost what we have budgeted. Based on previous year's usage and increases. So there's available cash right there, and that line item for FY 23 is almost nothing. So it's almost all our committed costs, and we're just planning for a little bit of an increase. So Bill, I think that actual line might be
It's just,
giving you a wrong impression.
yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear. And just why is that? Is that because it's just not, we haven't posted all the current bills, or what's going on there?
That's through December.
It's through December. As of right now, there's,
Paid through December.
yeah, right now the actual for gas and diesel is 80,656.68 with 21,585.36 encumbered. So there's an available balance right now, 2,931.11 for the remainder of the year.
The mild winter call.
Well,
Anything else on 19 highway? One thing, health department. Twenty-one, community services.
I don't have for a second.
Of course.
What are the contract services that the health department is using, what are the contract?
Okay.
The question, what are the,
Contracted services.
Right.
yeah, okay, so we contract for our public health nurse, which does our disease reporting and follow-up. beach testing for E. coli at Lake Mansfield, and then 2 locations along the Green River. We have a small contract that we share with DPW for the coffee machine. And I think that's it, but there's double check. Oh, and then our sharps removal for 2 kiosks. One is in the health department and the other is at the Rural Recovery Center.
21, community services. Twenty-two, council on aging.
Mark, are you, I understand, as I understand, Polly is departing, right? She's resigned her position
She's retiring in May.
in May, okay.
Right, so we're just gearing up now to post that position, updating her job description.
So is this the conservative assumption? You're assuming that her replacement would essentially make the same salary. Is that accurate?
That's correct. And again, I do have some flexibility, assuming you approve the contingency line as well.
All right, thank you.
Page 23, Veterans Affairs. Page 24.
What's the veterans district? I'm not sure. I don't know.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
What veterans district?
Yeah, it's probably our assessment. That's not Southern Berkshire District, but just, yeah, Ali's gonna look up right now and just see what expenses have come out of that in the past.
And Mark, while she's looking, if the veterans benefits so far this year actual paid out are quite low relative to what was approved. If there's excess funds there at the end of the year, do those just go into free cash?
Correct. And our state aid next year will reflect that.
Right.
We'll get a lower amount. So the Veterans District, we believe, is our assessment. So it's probably covering the far portion of the director's costs, salary and office rent costs and things like that. That thing too.
24, libraries.
Could I just get some clarification? I was confused at the last meeting and what's happening with full-time and part-time library clerks? Remember, there's this new part-time budget line and then a decrease in the full-time budget line, but the FTE stays the same on the full-time line. And I just remember being really quite confused as to what was happening.
Samara's on the line, so I'm gonna go ahead and come over, but I think she just broke out part-time and full-time employees in the budget.
Right, so
It just doesn't reflect that. You're correct. That was what we pointed out the last time.
Right. Samara?
Go ahead, Samara. Just unmute yourself, please.
Hi, yes, so in the new, in FY '24, we just broke out full-time and part-time, which hadn't been, and the number of positions then didn't carry down as it should have. So that full-time line is 5 positions, and the part-time line is 6, 2 of which are part-time.
Okay.
So the 6 meaning less than 1 full FTE per position. Could be anywhere from
Right.
0.9 to
It's like an
0.25 or
right,
anything. It's just not full time.
Yeah. The number.
Yes, the 7.5 of the full-time is could be, that extra 2.5 is the part-time altogether.
So that's a 6, so they're equal to 2.5 FTEs. Got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very clear, thank you.
That's my office supplies.
Yes, go ahead.
All right, where do we get our office supplies? From whom do we get them from?
We get them from a variety of places, WB Mason, Demco. Some of these places are like library specific items. And then the balance from Amazon.
I have no idea. I used to work there, but they're local. Have we had any discussion with GA Blanco? Is it local? The delivery would be less, et cetera, et cetera.
No, will you say the name again so I can write it down? I mean, there is the possibility that prior to me, there was a conversation. I don't know, but currently we don't, I believe, order anything. But if you could say the name, I'll write it down.
It's G as in Garfield, A Blanco, GA Blanco, BLANCO. They're in all.
Okay, great. We'll look them up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other library questions?
I just have a question, just in comparing with other departments. What's the hourly rate for the part-time clerks?
There's 3 different rates. They're Circ Tech 1, 2, and 3. And let me. These are the. Hold on one sec here. Okay, so right, so the different rates would be $17.37 an hour and $18 an hour. I don't actually have the third rate here because none of our employees fall into that 1, 2, 3 category. So, but those are the 2 rates.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Sam.
You're welcome.
Page 25, Parks and Recreation.
Just. I think I asked this last year. We're spending a considerable amount of money on the lifeguards at Lake Mansfield. We have no beach permits, so we don't charge any fees for on Lake Mansfield. And Mark is nodding his head. That's impossible.
Well, we can't charge, we take in
cannot.
federal money,
Yeah.
and that lake cannot be restricted to use. Good question. It's just.
All right, I'll ask it again next year.
Ed, you have your hand up. I don't even see you, Ed. Where are you?
Oh, sorry.
I got food.
Sorry, Ed. You're coming back in right now. I meant to move Samara back in. I think I moved Ed.
I was just
Do
lecturing.
you have a question, or do you just want to be back with the cool people?
Yeah, I just wanted to get back in the room. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Go ahead.
What are the youth programming? I have no idea.
We talked about that. That's contact with Railroad Street Youth and with Berkshire South to run programs, swimming programs at the lake, lifeguards, at the skate park and at the Housatonic. Different programs.
Is that possible?
Well, you know what it is, it's a management of it's a lot, and plus there's a lot of staff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is, and our lake is, Lake Mansfield's crowded in the summertime. It really is. A surprising amount. Anything else on that one? Page 26, boards and commission. Page 27, celebrations and events.
I wanted to say something in regards to, yesterday we were discussing, the request for, banners or flags and things of tonic, and I had been, talking with Mike Casey from the Adam Buds, VFW there, and, we're just trying to work on getting, veterans flags similar to what Garfield was mentioning, last night. And they're working on it now, so we're trying to get stuff like that, just to go down the parade route and put them on the telephone poles or something down there. So that was the request that had been made to Mark, and that's why the numbers are up a little bit there. So hoping to get it done for this summer, but a lot of research to get done, so.
So one question which just brought to mind, and I don't want to belabor the point, I don't know if the Memorial Day parades are gonna become ours this year, because
We were asked to take it on this year when we had this conversation last year.
that's what I'm, so do we need to budget for it? Is that pretty much just a lot of manpower, person power, and
I think it's just organizing out.
Okay.
Anticipating out-of-pocket expenses.
just want to make sure. 28, debt service.
Can I just ask, Allison, what is the, what is the interest rate you guys are assuming on the new issue?
About 4.5% on the short term debt and about 5% on the long term.
Okay.
And again, that's completely moving target.
Right, the wrong direction too, exactly. Yeah, we're moving in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, something that we should also like pay attention. I don't know how much it is in total, but the rates might be higher. So, yeah, that's what's happening.
Page 29, retirement. Page 30, insurance.
I don't, I had a follow-up question with Alicia, but she was, she could, I think where we left off is she was out sick and needed some more time, which is obviously understandable. But question for you, Mark, and maybe Allison. So an update on the retiree medical front, which is a very unfortunate update, is that it turns out that our expenses for those benefits in fiscal 22 were considerably down, almost down like 25% for extremely unfortunate reality of COVID and what that did to seniors. So my question is that mechanically, with our health and life insurance line, the way it's set up right now, to the extent that number was reduced in 22, did those savings essentially just move into that reserve portion of that line?
The savings move to.
Well, we won't use the word savings, it's very ghoulish, but that number was lower for fiscal 22
Right, so.
by about 125,000, I think, yeah.
So that would drop to free cash because it wasn't spent. Is that what you're asking for?
Well, I am trying to clarify that because the way this is set up is would that happen, or would the reserve portion of that line item just get bigger?
No, it
The
all
reserve-
drops to free cash.
But wouldn't the reserve go up? Because
Reserve would go up, but it would then drop to free cash.
you take it to free
It has to
cash?
drop to
Oh,
free cash.
really?
Whatever is not spent at the end of the year
So-
has to by law go to free cash.
Even if it's a liability for future?
Yes,
Oh,
because it's not
really?
set up
Oh,
as a
okay.
fund, it's set up as part of the general budget.
I see, okay.
Okay,
We're talking the night, I just had a little note here that we were going to relabel the health and life insurance.
I don't think we agreed to that.
Well, no, I think there was a discussion about it, I
Yeah.
just wanted to know if there was more, more clarification on that.
I think where, if I could take a stab at that, Mark, correct me if I'm wrong. I think where we're at right now is Alicia is gonna, we'll give it, obviously she needs some more time, but she was going to provide a schedule of the three components of that line item as best she could for the last 3 to 5 years. And that, I think, would be, from my perspective, very helpful. A very helpful next step on that, and then so we could see where we go from there, but.
$31 wastewater. Well, good news, I got 25% of the agenda done. Let's go to the, go to the bright side. This one should be short, because Peter's not here, neither is Sharon, but Berkshire Hills Regional School District. Do we have any follow-ups we want to ask, or?
I guess we're gonna do it tomorrow.
We will know more tomorrow. The vote is tomorrow night, the final vote.
I don't think we have any more to ask.
It's not gonna change, well, it will change, but if the recommendation of the finance subcommittee is taken, it will change, but not very much at all. That some of the increases will be taken out of a grant, rural varsity grant. Okay, let's tackle the capital section. 7, tab 7. I'll just name the category and then, just like we did under departments, and then we can discuss. Police.
Okay. How many are the compromise 78,000?
There's 20 pages.
So what's the math on it? A lot.
It includes contract for repair and parts.
Can I just ask a question? So on the budget sheet, which I don't know what page this is, the budget projections. For capital items non-borrowing, it says 868. And I guess I just don't know where that is here. It was redistributed here, I'm not sure. And maybe I'm misreading it, but it's under such articles for fiscal year 24 budget. It says 868 capital items non-borrowing. And then I'm looking at the tax levy places and I'm not seeing.
It's, and it includes those things on the top by tax levy, it also includes at the bottom. Everything wastewater,
Oh, the
retained
waste-
earnings,
Water.
so those should all total.
Oh, you think, okay, so that's,
It's tax.
so
levy.
614.4, yeah.
Essentially anything that's,
Oh, right. Waste.
not following or bringing. Tax levy.
Next would be fire.
Maybe it's cheap.
Please run it up.
Okay. Don't yell at me.
I'm not.
What is that got to see? There's a burning question gets been asked over and over again. I asked the other night, you weren't here, why the lights are on in the bay during the day for the fire truck?
So there's a pretty simple answer to that. When the station was designed, for some reason, there's a requirement for certain candle power, minimal candle power of light out there for safety OSHA requirements or something. And those lights cannot physically be turned off. So there are a few of the light banks that are on all the time.
So it's a requirement, should stand for motion that.
I believe that's what it comes through, because I tried figuring that out back when we first got into the station, and that's what it is. So I could not tell you exactly what regulation it falls under, whether it was OSHA or something in the electrical code or what, but those cannot be turned off. There's no switch for them.
Okay.
I'm sorry, is that the OSHA is saying we can't turn them off, or we just don't have
He's
a?
not swearing that it's OSHA, but there are no switches. So he spent 2 years looking for switches.
Charlie Williams, are you listening? Just walk days.
Well, can we get
You
a
need to-
person to
Go
put a,
ahead, Bill.
well, I'm gonna,
Time run.
the obvious
What's that?
follow-up is, can we put switches on there to turn them off? Yeah.
That's probably $1 million.
Wow.
DPW, vehicles and equipment.
Right on leaf blower. Reason for that, is there so much that we can't? I'm not trying to tax anyone too much, but I'm curious.
We currently have one, and we can't keep up with it. With the number of parts and everything that we have. Not used all year long, as you can imagine.
Buildings and grounds. Street and bridge improvements.
The question there, I guess probably for Chris, is there's $350,000 of sidewalk and path work that's not covered by grant money. Is that what is the critical nature of that, or how important is that work?
I heard you, Bill, I'm just looking.
Okay, yep.
If you can come back to me, I just need to dig into my.
Okay, no problem. It's didn't mean to put you on the spot, but I did, but that's an obscure question. I agree. But if you could come back to us on that.
Street and bridge improvements. That's when we were on. Next, parks.
Mandy, what are the park improvements?
So what are the park improvements?
What are they?
Yeah.
Sorry, I just don't know.
It's under tab 8, page 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess On the McAllister, I guess some portion of that is the McAllister parking lot project and planning for that. I guess the question is that just a, is that project really just kind of a basically creating a lawsuit from the homes that will have their views affected by that? And are we just kind of creating a insurmountable, you know,
Are you
an
planning
unachievable
the
project?
McAllister property parking lot, or is that a dead issue because of the threat of lawsuit?
I haven't heard of a threat of a lawsuit. What I have is, I have proposed 3 different options and sent it to the Conservation Commission, because that park's under their purview.
Yeah, it's not a park, under that purview, right?
So, I haven't heard back, so it's not quite an issue yet, because we can clearly put something along the streets to, widen the street. And it's gotta stay out of the park.
Okay, thank you.
Bill, on the sidewalks,
Yeah,
that number includes $100,000 generally for sidewalks anywhere in town. That's as we identify a sidewalk that needs repair, we could include that into a project. I will say, we've been working on I think it's about 8 or 10-year-old sidewalk inventory, and we just, like 2 weeks ago, got an updated sidewalk inventory, so we have a much better idea of where those sidewalks are. I can't tell you which one might get the treatment, but that is allowing us $100,000 generally. And the other portion of that amount is at Lake Mansfield. So a great deal of the Lake Mansfield work is grant funded currently, and it includes path work, removing the road, installing a path, things like that. So that's where the rest of that will go. I'm actually hoping that that portion of the Lake Mansfield project will be grant funded. But those grants haven't opened up yet, but I think we'll be a good candidate.
So if it's grant funded, we just won't borrow.
Exactly, exactly. So I hope that's a little bit clearer.
Sidewalk, are they asphalt or cement?
The question was, are the sidewalks asphalt or cement? It depends where they are. If it's in the core of the village, in Houstonic or in downtown, it would most likely be concrete. If it's on more of the outside of the villages or the downtown, it would be asphalt. That's the general policy that we follow. Where asphalt is
much cheaper.
Asphalt is much cheaper and much easier to repair and maintain.
Do we need to bother them with the cement area?
It's an aesthetic choice.
Well, aesthetic. We wanted about aesthetics. Asphalt works fine.
Can I just ask, so, is there any way to guesstimate how much borrowing of 6 million would increase our debt service, or is there just no way to know?
No, should be a way to calculate that. That's pretty straightforward.
I mean, because I'm just looking at the debt service increase is about 25% of our total budget increase. I should say town budget increase. And I don't think we borrowed this much last year, so this is going to be a hit for us in next year's budget.
But you always saying that the 25% of.
Well, I have the total budget, the town
Yeah.
budget is about 800,000 increase. And about 200 of that is debt service.
Or debt service, you're saying 200, the increase of the, oh, I see, okay. And it's gonna get higher because the rates will go up.
Is the question what will be the impact of fiscal 25?
For, yes, fiscal 25, yeah. I mean, again, I understand the interest rate, but recognizing that interest rates are probably gonna go up.
Oh, yeah, they are gonna go up.
I just, you know, and I look at this and I think about, you know, how we have to find ways to cut and, you know, worry about staffing and supporting our staff. And again, I know that this work is important too, but I think just every time we borrow, we're pushing it down and we could see ourselves with.
It's a double-edged sword. You're absolutely right. The other side of that is when we push some of these projects down the road,
As we've
It's gonna get more
it's
expensive.
a problem in
Yeah,
itself.
it's gonna
So
get
I'm not sure there's a right answer. You're right.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm not, it's just,
Yeah.
but
So
I
they'll come
think
back to us.
we'll probably see more in our debt service for next year's budget, for the following years,
Yeah.
subsequent years budget.
Technology.
Can, my understanding is this is on the select board priority list and.
Correct.
And so is there what will happen after this make ready work is done? What is the next step after that?
The idea would be for, it would probably take the form of the town issuing RFP to internet providers to actually use that trunk line that can be installed on the poles and serve homes and businesses in the village. So it'll extend the broadband from Stockbridge Road all the way up to Wisconsin and through the core of Wisconsin.
and you're gonna have one service provider? That's the plan, or multiple?
We don't know,
You
that'll
don't-
be subject to bidding.
Yeah, and is this number a full quote, or where is this number coming from?
This comes from engineers at National Grid and Verizon who jointly own the poles.
Oh,
And
so they
that's,
gave you that's their number.
yes, that's
Okay.
their number, and about a year's worth of work went into.
Getting the number.
Getting that number.
Okay.
Does this pole really have to be fully replaced? Does that one have to get taller?
Okay.
So this doesn't include the lines themselves, it's the preparation of the poles for.
It's for
Very-
those
very
utilities,
cool,
the phone and electric utilities to move their own lines and or install bigger poles to make room for fiber.
Got it.
And this is for
Fiber
the,
optic.
this is for a fiber project, not obviously just not for standard cable, right?
Correct, fiber optic.
And who's gonna put the fiber there?
We don't know, that'd be
Uh-huh,
subject to bidding.
And did you have a preliminary conversation with some of the providers here?
We have some
You
ideas.
did, okay. So they,
We don't know what that would cost.
but,
If they would do it on their own, subject to how many subscribers. they
right,
can get.
right, of course.
Might be
Makes the business.
Might be a business
decision
decision.
for them, yeah,
And maybe
yeah.
a later capital
Yeah,
project. for us
yeah.
to participate
But you
in.
had some initial conversation. Okay,
Yes.
right.
I just make one note here and set about, soon as I echo something from the DPW office. Something on.
I have my computer on.
Okay,
Is it echoing in here?
yeah.
we can.
Oh, or, sorry.
Mhm.
I thought that was on too. Yeah. But that was it. Okay,
I guess I just want to touch base on the broadband make ready here. I just would, I feel like I probably say this quite a bit, but I think it would be a worthwhile investment in just trying to promote more business and reuse of multiple mill buildings that we have in that portion of town, you know, and it would be an infrastructure project that I feel would be taken well and help promoting some aging mills that are, you know, looking for infrastructure help to help promote filling them with whether it's artisan space or business or technology. So I also see it obviously helping the residents and you know, we have a lot of dead spaces for self-service and stuff in that end of town too, so.
This helps also.
It would increase, you can make a cell phone call when you're on a broadband service as opposed to, say, if you were to have Time Warner Spectrum at your house with that Wi-Fi calling, it doesn't hold the same, so. But I have a lot of customers in Alfred and Mount Washington, and they have amazing broadband up there, and they use their cell phones off their internet there, so.
Okay. Nice.
Wastewater. I'm done. Special article section. First one, community impact funding.
Let's use it.
You're comfortable with the 500?
What's that?
Comfortable with the 500?
Yes, yes.
Weren't we talking about adding the
525.
525, adding the 25,000?
Yeah, we, it is eligible.
If it's
Yeah,
eligible.
and then
Okay, that's fine.
And what is behind the number, Mark? You guys have some specific programs, or this is just a placeholder?
So, this would be year 4 for us. First year was 185, the last 2 years have been 350. We don't know what applications we'll receive this year. We won't
Okay, yeah,
advertise until the
just a
summer.
placeholder, okay, all right.
But we were, this was a request from the Community Impact Fund Committee to increase it.
Okay.
That's why we went up $150,000 this year.
vocational tuition and transportation.
Think we have to fund that.
Yeah, obliged, yeah.
Stabilization, both, well, let's take 3 and 4 together.
It's an important commitment to keep doing. So,
It
yeah.
really is, you're right. OPEB trust,
I would make a motion to eliminate that $176,000 number, given we just found a big pile of money for this purpose.
I'll second that.
I'll second that.
so first let's have Bill. Poll the finance committee, get a second and vote.
I'm a little bit confused. Where did you find the money for this? Phil?
I didn't find it. Mark, just.
He looked everywhere.
This actual line.
There was an article that was proposed in 1986 to establish what they called at that time an unfunded pension liability.
Right, yeah, I'm familiar with that, yeah.
So that's what he's referring to, the
Yeah, but-
$820,000.
So the anticipation was adding the 176.5 to make it $1 million.
Extra
But I understand Phil's point, and I actually agree with it.
Oh,
because
so he doesn't
we
see
only
just-
had the 870,000, so.
Okay.
And would we still rename this to an OPEB trust?
Yeah, I think you'd see 2 articles. The first one establishing the OPEB trust, and then assuming that passes at town meeting, we would reprint the 820 and create an OPEB trust with $820,000 in it.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much all we can do with this 820. I mean,
That's, yes.
right.
It's a very good find. So
Yeah,
did you have a motion, Phil?
Yeah, Phil, let's.
Yeah, so well, I'm making a motion to modify the special article number 5 to eliminate the allocation of $176,500, $176,500 to the OPEB trust to be created. So it would just be created, and we would add the $820,000.
Seconded.
Take a
Any
vote
further
on it.
discussion?
No.
Roll call vote. Ann,
Aye.
Madonna,
Aye.
Elena,
Hi.
Richard,
Aye.
and I'm I as well.
Do I have a motion from the select board?
I'd like to repeat the motion from the finance committee as presented by Phil Bourne.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that. Oops.
Beat you to it.
Okay.
I have a motion, a second, any discussion?
Yeah, there's no such thing as an easy budget year, and I think we should put the rest of the money into it. We've been talking about OPEB for as long as I've been on this board, so that's 9 years now. So I would vote against this.
I think that, I see this money that we're moving here is helping fund, the staffing positions that we're looking to fill, whether it's all of them or just a few more, since we're all at different numbers here. And, so that's when the motion was starting to be made, that's where my mind went, right away to help with staffing.
There definitely was a small leeway, yes, yeah. So we have a motion and a second, roll call vote, Garfield.
Aye.
Eric. Aye. Ed.
No,
Lee.
Aye.
And I, it passes 4-1. Emergency medical services.
I mean, I guess, I still wish they had come to us with some sort of spreadsheet that showed how they got this number of 151, 294. It just seemed, I mean, if someone asked me where they got it, I could say, well, it had something to do with the town's valuation of the town and what they saw as the shortfall in their budget, but that's, it, to me, I mean, I appreciated the letter that you forwarded, but again, I just find it really strange that they won't, I'm not asking them to give like individual people's salaries, but how did they come to this number? Again, I'm inclined to support this, but I just would want to know a bit more.
Chief Burger.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit, try not to speak out of turn. Not on the board right now. I was on it through the whole development of everything. And so I can say that over everything that's gone on over the past few years that I was on the board, one of the things that went really well is a very detailed budget that is being managed extremely well. Right through last year, it came in pretty much to the pennies of what was budgeted for. And so there's excellent control over that now. The thing that was the wild card was revenues. Previously, we had a consultant that was doing that, and he was terrible. And so
thank you for stating the obvious.
So now that's being done in-house. There's a much better, basically based on historical data, and there is tons of other stuff up in the air that has to, even just something like GB rehab closing down affected things because that affected a bunch of scheduled transfers and stuff like that. So there's tons of stuff that is totally out of their control, but based on very good historical data, I think that they really do have very good estimates of both revenues and expenses. The thing that I'll say, I'll try to say gently is that I think that there's a board that has a great skill set for mostly running the place. And there are some differences of opinion there based on some people with a very strong business background and stuff that are a huge asset, but keep things a little bit closer. And that's not necessarily shared by everybody. I can tell you there's nothing secretive about it. I would personally happily show you everything. But I think you're going to get a bunch of the information you're looking for, but that's not up to me anymore. But I can tell you from seeing everything that there is nothing secretive there, and it's actually the detail and the way it's being done is actually quite good right now. But I hope you'll be getting to see more. There certainly shouldn't be any fear of any big ambulance company coming in here and looking at their data because it's too small a market for anybody else, and they're not going to provide the service. You can look at every other place in the Pioneer Valley and stuff that thinks they're going to save a couple dollars, and then they have some big service come in and then suddenly we don't have any ambulances available and stuff, so,
But you feel good about this ask?
yes, I feel good about that, like I said, I'm pretty certain, you will be getting more, data, some of what you're looking for. But again, that's not up to me anymore.
All right, thank you. That's very helpful.
So, Chief Burgess, looking ahead, so, you know, we have $150,000 ask, you know, unchanged, whatever. So looking ahead, I mean, is this sustainable? Is this gonna be going up each year? If one of the towns decide they don't want it, are we gonna be not told them?
So, I think the town in the best situation is Great Barrington, because, I guess that long term would be the only town that has other options. The other towns aren't going to back out. They can't. They can talk about it, they can threaten, but they're not going to get a medic service for that cheap anywhere else. The only reason that they get it is because of the call volume in Great Barrington. That's the only way that the service is sustainable and has been viable for this long, free of charge. With regards to the big ask this year, there are two reasons for that. One is the escalating salaries, which did need a substantial adjustment made to them. But the other biggest one was the improperly estimated revenues. So you're not going to see that number double next year, or whatever. I would agree with the answer that Jim and Joe gave last night with regards to, yes, it will go up, but it will be more in line with the more general cost of living kind of adjustments based on a few percentages and stuff, not based on the problems that there were this time, so to speak. Yeah.
Anyone else on that? So let me talk about Housatonic Waterworks really. That was a placeholder in case the 150 wasn't repurposed. And it looks like it's going to be repurposed. So we have two choices, and without causing headlines that we're cutting 150,000 from Housatonic, because that's far from the truth. We could remove that now. Or we could wait till our next meeting to see if we have any more news from the State House. But there's a third choice. The third choice, instead of 250, which was our aspirational goal, keep that and have 400,000. I'm not sure we need 400 as remediation for Housatonic. I think 250 is what we wanted, and that looks like what we're gonna get. So whether it's tonight or whether it's at our next meeting, we could free up $150,000 there. Without cutting anyone in Housatonic, it's still gonna be the 250, which is what we wanted.
Do you think we're gonna get some answers from the State House shortly?
It's been approved by the House and it's off to the Senate for review and approval now.
So
can't imagine-
it's out of our hands, but
It is, but I can't imagine they wouldn't.
not approve it, right?
Yeah, especially when Great Barrington has specifically requested.
Yeah, Mark, the other side of that is, when do you believe that the town will be ready to spend this money?
So I've applied for the $100,000 already. And I was told at that time that we can anticipate about a 16-week timeline. So that would put us somewhere in April before we start to receive those funds.
So do you have so that money isn't really arriving till April. So do you know,
That's probably best case scenario.
The best case. So do you know if we get the money, do we know how we're going to spend it?
That's a conversation the select board will have to have shortly. So the answer is no.
Contrary to,
maybe another option.
well, contrary to belief of other people, we do have a clue how we're gonna spend it.
Right, okay, all right.
You know, we have a few choices.
All right, but so if we, just another option here is if we were to eliminate this sort of backup amount, worst case scenario happened and that the state money fell through. If we were then, do we then have the option to go to our town meeting and add another request for that money? To sort of get it back, add it back.
It depends on the timing. We couldn't add an article on the floor of town meeting. We have to amend some existing budget line.
Which makes me think, why not leave it in there, and then we can always vote it. Say we don't need to vote
You
to
can vote
approve
to
it at
pass
the town
over.
meeting.
Yeah, we can vote to pass over. So I think that the best thing, Ann's right, the best thing to do is that in the best case scenario, that in a couple weeks before the public hearing, we find out that we're gonna get the money and then we take it out. And that the worst case scenario is that we find out we're gonna get the money and at town meeting we pass over and it has the same effect.
Yeah.
I mean, we haven't allocated the money, so it's not gonna drop to free cash, it's gonna affect the levy, so let's do that, I think everyone's now in their
Yes.
head, so I think that's fine.
To leave it is what you.
Yeah,
Leave
leave
it.
it until we're absolutely positive,
I concur.
excellent. Cemetery study and maintenance, next. Unemployment trust fund,
It's important to fill it back.
yep, affordable housing trust fund. Website upgrade. Legal fees associated with host community agreement renewals. Etc.
That was coming
So we
from,
have,
that's coming from the host agreement, right?
correct.
Okay.
Good. Let's first set a date for another meeting.
Everybody doing Saturday.
I'm
Well,
gonna
you know,
throw
what
out,
about your still candies, right?
I'm gonna throw out March 14th, it's a Tuesday night.
Works for me.
March 14th.
Six P M.
Six
Yeah.
P M.
Yeah,
Okay,
Art, you're back.
No, I will leave on the 15th.
So we can't have it.
No, you know, you pack.
It works.
Where you leave us.
I leave on. To be here for the board.
Right.
Chris, Joe, Alan. Is there anyone I'm missing? Chief, are you still in town?
Thank you.
Okay, the other question, can someone look at the town website to make sure this room's available?
Oh.
We're gonna stay at 6 o'clock, Steve.
We're gonna stay at 6 if everyone agrees,
And you're talking about the 14th?
the 14th.
The 5-town cable advisory committee meets at 6:30, is that okay?
But that's Zoom, I think. Let's look on the website and see. I think that's, I'm not positive.
No, it says in the meeting room.
There,
But it's in.
full meeting room. They don't always meet very.
It
Oh, it
says-
does say Barrington,
Okay, so that's,
That's a great Barrington.
unless you want to meet remote.
no, not really.
They can't
We
use a
can't- we
smaller
can't do
room,
Zoom. What small room?
but I don't know, I'm just saying, is there another space they can meet?
Do they do it remotely as well as, or are they completely in
I
person?
don't see a Zoom link on their posting.
Yeah, but there's time that they could get one.
Well, that's, no, what I'm saying is just the opposite, that I'm agreeing with you. If they don't meet remotely at all, they can, chief can host them at the fire station. Or they can be at the library, they can be anywhere if they're not Zoom. I don't know for 100% sure of that.
There's no Zoom option on the agenda right now.
Okay, so let's keep ours and nicely remove them and we all forget satellite dishes before that.
So I guess, I don't know if we're wrapping up, but I guess we would open by talking about all the new lines. and asking Mark to come back with some recommendations to us?
Well, that's the last thing we're gonna do, yes, you're correct, so. Well, I guess the direction we need to give, I don't guess, I know the direction we need to give. Is for the 14th. We've found. By a 9-1 vote, $176,500. We might have 150,000. So there's somewhere around 300,000 for late night back in the napkin math. How much more would we like, if any, would we like Mark to come back with us to remove in any way he sees fit, or his staff?
And we added 20,000, didn't we?
Did we add 20,000?
I don't think we did.
No, that was,
No,
that was
out of
free
the,
cash.
out of the,
cash
yes,
add.
yes. So we haven't added anything yet. I suspect we might by the time we get done.
I guess the way, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead. Phil.
I agree with the question. It's a bit hard to come up with a number, but what I would say is right now, Mark, you've budgeted in a cost of the new staff that adds up to roughly, I think it was roughly 200,000 based on partial years.
Correct, and that includes benefits, correct?
So can I?
Right, so I wonder if you could give us the projected cost of the new staff
He will at the next meeting.
for the full year. Yeah.
Yeah, you will
Yeah,
at the next
I
meeting.
have that.
And I'd say one way to look at it is what would have to happen to this budget to keep it flat between, the partial year and the full year.
You lost me on that.
Yeah, I don't understand. how that
So in other words,
So it's laid out.
that's happening a lot. I'm gonna make up numbers to hopefully help my point. You're saying the staffing now costs $200,000 based on the partial years. Big numbers, if that, say it cost 400,000, if you assume they're all working for a full year. So I would like to hear from you what you would do to the proposed additional staff if you only had that $200,000 to spend.
For a full fiscal year?
Right.
So what you're saying is that keep the 200,000, but anything above that.
Yeah.
Would have to be.
Right, yeah, because what I'm trying to say, I'm doing a bad job of it, I acknowledge it, is that your incremental, your staffing additions is implying a built-in additional increase for fiscal 25. When all those people go full year.
Right.
So
So
I'd
you-
like to know what lower level of staff increase would just keep it flat between 24 and 25.
So
So
what-
you just want to be flat on the additional salaries.
I guess
Yeah.
if to assume they would be, these are not 6-month positions, it's not like 6 months every year, it would just be 6 months for the coming year. But what would it look like if these were, you're thinking about them as 12-month jobs? I mean, I guess I jotted down what I thought were the increases, so IT director, 75,000, assistant accountant, additional 50,000, assistant DPW, 82,000, police 80,000, firefighter 63,000, landscaper 55,000. It came to about 400.
Landscapers not,
No, that was already
that was already in last year's budget.
budgeted from last year.
But it's not in the budget, so, okay.
It is in the budget.
It
But
is.
It's not in the previous year's budget when we,
Well, it just is missing.
It's just missing.
so it's about 350,000.
It was in the labor.
So
line.
350.
Reallocated.
You're saying
So
350?
it was in,
But does it include all the benefits? Is it full load? There's not a full loaded number, so would it be full
The
load?
benefits are included in insurance.
Yeah,
Yes.
so, yeah.
And the total years, so if this, we're talking fiscal 25, 5 positions, 325, 572.
Yeah, plus.
Whatever,
Plus that.
30% benefits? Yeah.
She said the benefits were already included in another line item.
But
The benefits were already included in another line.
We
in there.
already included the benefits and the insurance for these positions.
do you, Alex, do you have a number that you for benefits like
Like
20,000?
30%, yeah,
I
usually,
mean, usually that's just like kind of a round number that you
Yeah.
estimate.
it's usually like 30% benefit, yeah, 50% over salary, yeah.
So if the salary is
It's just-
350,
Yeah, you can do a ballpark,
you
yeah,
could do 70,000.
yeah, that's what I guess Phil is saying. You know, netted against what you're gonna spend this year's budget cycle, so. Yeah,
I guess, if I was to say, you know, we did find some savings that we have voted on here, I guess. At the end of the day, I like Steve's suggestion about trimming some things back to maybe fully support the staff, because after, you know, thinking and Allison stating, making the point of, you know, all the capital products, all the more work, all the way down the line, I understand that. I would feel good if we did find some more savings somewhere and shifted that to the staffing. To line to make that happen for everybody, because I you know, dealing with staffing issues myself, I do understand how that helps all the way down the line. But it would be nice to find a little bit more savings somewhere to accommodate that, although I think we're close by Ann's numbers.
So, yeah, I agree. I know it's kicking the can down the road a little bit, because if we keep the staff, we're gonna have a problem next year, but that's our problem for next year, or it may not be. But if we just say to the staff that, and I'm gonna throw a number out, just a made up number, find another 150,000. If you think that's one position plus some office supplies, whatever, however you want to do it, that's fine. If you want to do it out of positions, that's fine, but you know, if we just come up with a number, we have 300,000, we think right now. If we could come up with, you know, another sum of money and come back to us at the next meeting with how you plan to meet that, it will have the same effect this year on the levy. It's. Yeah, Alex, go
Can I
ahead.
just make one other statement about the positions that we didn't discuss earlier is part of my reason for my office and also the IT director is we're gonna have a pretty significant upgrade in our Munis software this year. That's our financial software. And it's going to be pretty hefty as far as the changes.
Yeah.
Which will be great.
No, I get
Getting
it.
there will be a little struggle.
You know, I think
So
this
just
group is-
wanted that to be out and then.
But I agree, but I think this group has been very clear that as uncomfortable as we are with new staff, we think it's justified. It's just the effect it has on the tax rate, on the tax levy, is what is concerning. Is there a number that we can agree to in the next few minutes? To ask them to come back by reducing the budget
On top of what we already did.
on top of the 300.
Yes.
When you say 300.
Where's this 300?
I'm not on the
That was a
150
rough-
for Housatonic, because I'm still thinking that's a placeholder, and I'm still being very confident around the 176.
So 326,
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
Alex, can I just ask, are we gonna have some savings then if it was the case that the landscaper was actually in the labor budget line? Well, because right now the labor budget line is actually going up, which would make no sense. So this is, I'm in on page 13 for line 51137. It goes up from 243,000 to 253,000 plus the landscaper, and that doesn't seem to make sense.
Yeah, you'll see that the 243,394 from FY 23 town vote is what the FY 24 budget request is. And I think that that's therein where some of the confusion lies with Joe and I as far as the budget request. So it's not an additional, I'm assuming that's the case, that was already included in that labor line.
The landscape.
Yes.
That was before
Last
my
year.
time, we got to do some digging.
Yeah, why don't? we get
I
back
guess
in the
what I'm
next meeting?
suggesting is there might be
There-
40,000.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah, let's come back and I agree. Let's come back and
Yeah, I-
clarify that, to make sure.
I would say that we reduced the budget by 325,000 in a manner that was way too easy. I mean, the 175 was just sort of good luck, literally from the sky. And the 150 on Housatonic is really just intended to be a backstop to the Boston approval. So I guess I would propose that we ask Mark to come up with some proposed cuts in the order of magnitude between 150 and $200,000. And let us evaluate that. I think we need to work a little more to make sure we're sort of kind of split this up in an appropriate way.
Yeah, I agree with everything you say. And yes, we do have the review power over that. But at all costs, I would hope that we're not gonna go line by line on his cuts and discuss that. And hopefully we will accept for the most part, unless it's just something there that is glaring. I've just been through that before. It's very
No, I
ugly.
hear it. No, you have. I take your point.
If we do that, would you be able to give us a sense of how that would affect the tax rate that we're projecting in terms of?
It's a clarification. You're suggesting that we've reduced the proposed budget already by 325
Yeah,
to the two articles, and you'd like to see another 150 or $200,000.
On top of it. Yeah.
And a dig,
Yeah.
yes.
Sorry, your
and
question.
then a sense of how that would affect the tax rate or the projected tax rate if we're.
So about 170, 880,000 would be
They're
10 cents.
gonna.
You have it there, Sandy.
10 cents.
10 cents per thousand.
To bring it down.
It's not terrific, but we're not here to decimate the budget, so it may be somewhat ceremonial, but I think it is a start. And I think Phil's point, although I'm really scared about it, worried about it, concerned about it, is that there's any money, any spending that David agrees that can be used out of the, in addition, I'm talking about, out of the, host community agreements that, yeah, exactly, that we may look into that too for a few more dollars. That does worry me.
Yeah.
The long-term ramifications of that. Is everyone in agreement with Phil's suggestion of 150 to 200?
I would say so.
I think that's
yes.
pretty reasonable.
It's a good
request,
reasonable.
yeah.
Okay.
And then I would just say, caveat with the 4.5 roughly, in the community impact funding. That's one of the questions I always keep getting, where's that money going? Why aren't we using that to bring down the tax rate? So if there is anything else that you creatively might find that we could move over into,
We had several conversations,
Yeah.
staff did, and it's
There's not-
incredibly
Right.
difficult to justify. So we struggled with it, but we
Yeah,
continue to look at it.
I mean, there's that fine line. I'm sure we can get creative, but we can also end up in court.
Right.
And how creative do we want to be next year, have a court battle over this, or having to return?
I feel very comfortable. With how we spend the money.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But I guess to Bill's point, the co-respondent program, that seems like ideal. If we're gonna even do that, something that was like the first step.
Maybe we need to make that public, because that's a question that keeps getting answered over and over again. People obviously don't know how that works.
What works?
The community impact. Because you will, why you not even pass that in the beginning,
I think it's hard for people to absorb it, to be honest with you. I feel,
What you can do
They don't know, but you at least give them a chance to be aware.
Well, let's be honest, I don't know that they know. I don't know that they're talking about the community impact as much as they're talking about the whole revenue, because there's another whole 3% that we're getting, which we're using $4 million of. But and that question becomes, why did you use that to reduce the tax rate? Well, if we didn't have the 4 million.
We did it last year. the 4.1 million.
Yeah, and
last year.
why are we lower this year? Just curious, instead of what we had
Well,
last year.
We're a little bit lower this year because we were trying to be mindful of keeping that community impact funding portion of our free cash separate. We didn't quite know last year what portion of our free cash was or should be reserved for community impact funding
Mhm.
versus what we're.
So it was just a guess for you.
The guidance is clear this year.
Oh, I see, for you, you know.
I still don't know why we can't present that to.
We can. Again, there's no reason, I'm not sure, we understand it well enough to present, but we can.
I think even the money that we're
Yeah.
using to keep the tax rate down, the public is not really aware that you've been working so diligently to try to keep the tax rate down. I think we could do a better job of letting the public be aware of that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's, I agree with both Garfield and. Anything else for this evening?
I hate to bring it up, but just.
Or then don't.
Just as sorry. Now you can feel it. I believe they justified everything in the budget, and it's a beautiful budget, but our concerns are all real. I was just wondering, in any of the new staffing, especially I would say in the accounting department, you're going from, you're used to having a part-time person a quarter. Is there any way to increase the amount of person that you use, but not all the way to a full-time staff? Just as another option to hold one of the new positions off for a year. It's just a question I have.
I think they've got to look at all that, I think you're right, Rich.
One thing I would just say is that once we hit that 19-hour threshold, we're offering benefits anyway.
Right.
And under that 19-hour threshold is incredibly difficult
To find someone, yeah,
Yeah.
right, right. So maybe only an incremental savings, but I'm sure you thought of it, but I just wanted to put it out for everyone.
The turnover for unbenefited positions is quite high. If we can even fill them.
Yeah.
Anyone else before I go to citizen speak? Citizen speak. Go ahead.
I just wanted to, I'm sure everyone knows, but I want to recognize that today is International Women's Day, so for the women. I also want to recognize Lee Davis doing her civic duty. I think it might have been today or yesterday, one of our citizens fell in their backyard. They called out for help. And Lee, being a good neighbor, went and helped her up.
How did you hear about that?
Very good.
I saw Margie.
You should volunteer with some. It was scary because I have a bad back and I was lifting her up and she had fallen behind her house in the snow and I just went, help, help, help. I was at the lake. It's really scary. I'm glad you.
Citizen speak. Media comment. We are by unanimous consent adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.